the governance, what's the legal problem actually is the most important one to solve.
Yeah, I think adding to that, I think that's a great point because when we talk about code, we talk about smart contracts, and whenever we talk about legal stuff, we again like talk about code, right? So I feel like making sure that there's some kind of standard set in terms of security, in terms of privacy, everyone should be able to, if not write code, they should be able to understand code so no one can fool you around your assets, right? If you are able to, because see, code is available on the blockchain, you can check the code because it's accessible, it's permissionless. That's what the blockchain offers to us, right? But then if we are not able to understand, if we are not doing our due diligence, right, I think it's not going to be of any use for us, right? So for me to be able to go there and look for a smart contract, look for a blockchain space, and be able to see like how my assets would be interacting with each other in the network, with the other users, with myself, I think that's a key thing to do from our sides, and I think that's required in terms of security because we can, again, like we can trust code, but we cannot trust people who are writing those codes, right? Because it's like man is handling this stuff that we are believing in. So it's not like trustlessness, like it's a myth. I wouldn't say myth, but like there's a way to go because there are steps to involve and we have to take active measures for making sure that that happens.
So I mean, we've pretty much established that there is no ownership on blockchain, is that right?
There is ownership, yes, because see, by default, that's what blockchain offers you. It offers you ownership, it offers you permissionlessness, and it offers you security. But at the same time, how we are interacting with them, how the code is being coded, that's not automated, right? So we can't trust people yet, but then when we cross that line and we say, okay, now that the person who wrote the code is fine, then we can fully trust the code and we'll let it execute when the time is there.
Yeah, very fair. And to come to the two prior points.
But just can I just add something there? Just it struck me when you were speaking that everybody knows the Bored Ape stuff and the Yuga Lab stuff. Like the terms, you should read the terms and conditions of the original NFT sale for the Bored Ape, where the owner actually got the full rights to the image, and then when they did the sale for the land sale for the game, the other side game, those NFTs, the user didn't get the ownership; they got a license. So even though you think it's an NFT, it's just basic like terms and conditions, old-fashioned contract law. That in Yuga Labs' case, they're changing from token sale or NFT sale to NFT sale. So call it an NFT, but it's really the terms and conditions you have to look at.
Kishore, anything from your side? Awfully quiet back there.
I guess covered up almost all the points, pretty much.
I mean, it's very fair, right? And admittedly, the legislation is lacking, and the tech standardization or the code standardization and due diligence is lacking. Shamelessly plugging KPMG for code audits right here. But then what is true digital ownership? What is true ownership in the digital space? Is it limited to digital assets? I mean, the early stage NFTs were linking towards URLs that represented the asset, and the security was lacking there. Now we have blockchains, or at least NFT blockchains, that support some level of memory and storage. Where is that going down the line for, let's say, digital assets in a metaverse space where you're buying and selling skins of a specific asset or an avatar? Where does that leave us? Where does that go?
So I feel like when it comes to the user interaction, yes, the non-fungible tokens and the ERC20 tokens are something that is in our control because we cannot deal with the underlying blockchain infrastructure because that's not our part that we are playing. But as a user, as a consumer of a particular thing, as me being able to buy and sell and even license certain things, just like Bored Ape NFTs, right? I think that's where your control happens, and that's where we are talking about true ownership. So let's talk about gaming, right? Because that has been like one of the big buzzing thing in the ecosystem right now. So think about a game. Traditionally, we don't own. Even when we were paying stuff, we were paying for skins, we were paying for like random characters, avatars. We don't fully own it. Like that particular avatar, like everyone else is owning as well, We are basically just paying them to like have access to that. Access versus permissionlessness, I think that's a difference that we should know. Access is like, you can get access to a lot of things, but are you able to give permissions? Are you able to control the permissions for yourself, for other people? Are you able to license it? Are you able to share it, sell it, buy it? I think that's where the ownership and that's where the control happens. So in terms of like the interaction and the user journey, yes, I think these tokens are like the primary key points.
Yeah, my view of ownership, again, taking a traditional view, is whether that's a legal ownership or economic ownership. I think that's the first question to ask. And secondly, what is the time span of ownership? To put into perspective, like in Singapore, we've been talking about freehold properties because that's what you own almost forever, or 999 years. And then we've got people who started buying 99 years property, which is sitting on top of MRT stations, but they're generating better yields. So there is a big time difference between 99 years and forever, right? So if we were to shorten that perspective into how long a platform would exist economically, well, practically, it could be good for 3 years. Or if you're playing a game like World of Warcraft, maybe 10 years you could be yielding from it. So if you were to think about ownership, what is the kind of, what is the value that you're going to be deriving out from it? So I work on a project which we tokenize a durian plantation. So we were thinking about how someone could own the trees, or in the space there has been people that securitizing the entire plantation, whereby they get a share of the yield of the durians being sold. So now the question is, do you want to own a part of the proceeds from the entire business? Or do you want to own a tree which can be sold as an NFT? Then the next question is, with that tree that you would digitally own, does it give you that physical right to that tree? How are you going to tie that legality around it? Or are you happy to look at a yield from a staking perspective? Or are you looking at a capital gain that you have a limited edition NFT that you could flip it in 2 or 3 weeks? So I think there's really many ways to skin this, the idea of ownership. I think it's quite different from one person to another. But ultimately, as a money person managing funds, I would say I'm more focused on the economic side of things. And just like any investor, you'll be looking at the point of entry and point of exit. And on a net basis, what are you deriving out from there? And in this space, I would say maybe it's beyond money. It could be joy. It could be the fun and the friendship and what you enjoy from the ecosystem as well.
I'll just add to that. As a VC, we are really not concerned about ownership. We are concerned about unlocking equity. For example, you buy property, right? If your house is just sitting there for 10, 20, 30 years, it's of no use. So what do? You go to the bank and you take a loan against your property, so you unlock the equity. And that's very much possible with fungible tokens. But I've seen over the last 6 months, you can now unlock your equity on NFTs. So you can literally get a loan against your NFT. You can even lend and borrow against it. And you can even do a derivative contract against your NFT. So these are the new developments which are happening, and that's why DeFi and NFT together makes it very powerful for a VC.
Nice. Got to say that nothing bad's ever happened from creating derivatives off of volatile assets. So I guess the next step here is, from an investment perspective, we've covered. How do you, or what's the future hold for us? And it's like, where's this all going? I mean, we've got investments, we've got tokenized investments, we've got real estate, we've got games, skins, NFTs, and so on. But what's the next step here? What's the next step once we've established a framework of ownership? What can we build?
I am particularly bullish on decentralized social media because there are a lot of use cases. Like gaming became big in the Web3 space just because there were a lot of in-game assets that could be utilized in terms of NFTs as an avatar, NFTs or ERC tokens as like in buying currencies and all of that stuff. But then again, like when we talk about the emerging market, emerging trend, I feel like decentralized social media have many more use cases for NFTs and for cryptocurrencies or stable coins, because every action that you're going to take on any of the social media, it's data backed. So whenever we talk about data, we have to, just because everyone is talking about decentralized and that's why we are here, we want ownership of that. So if I'm posting any of the posts, if I'm writing posts, I need to have control over that. If I'm interacting with someone else's post, I need to have a kind of control over that as well, right? So each action on social media is going to be tracked. It's going to be recorded on a blockchain, and I feel like that's where the role of NFTs and even DeFi can get in and help in terms of just becoming a soft ground for a lot of people to join in, because a lot of Web2 people, or even like just people who are not interacting with tech stuff really, they just know how to interact with social media, right? So it's a soft ground to onboard a lot of people and like get the mass attention if we start building decentralized social medias and get NFTs on roll.
Yes, I agree with that. So the essence of Web3 is so-called the binding of your identity and everything that generates from the identity. So it's all about different ways of defining your identity. So if you think about social media and the social network, so we used to think these things are very valuable, but how to value them, right? And how to give a price to everything you talk about, all the actions you perform. And when people talk about now the new technology like AIGC, if you use AIGC program to generate some new style out of that, can you define your own personal economy so that everything you generate, all the proceeds, you can define who get which portion and how much they pay for the tax and so on. So all these are, I think, are the potential. And there is something even bigger, I think, is relevant to everybody's life. For example, in Singapore, we have PDPA regarding how each business is going to use your data. But that also put most of the local business in disadvantage because we cannot use data freely as many other countries. So one of the ideas is it able to actually tokenize all our personal data in a way that, including all the consumption data, offline, all these behavior data, so that these data become asset of everyone. And then the business, no matter it's a consulting company, government agency, research institute, can actually tap into that. And also you have to face all the challenges in the privacy-aware computation, data pricing, data auditing, and all these problems. So I think going forward, there are much more things to be tokenized and using, for example, NFT. And the great potential is in bringing value to all those virtual things rather than the actual physical things.
I'll just add to that. I think what's going to be big, or the next thing, is NFT in the metaverse. Now, metaverse is too big, so let's just talk about one thing: avatars. We're all going to be having our own avatars, right? So when you have your avatar, what do you need? You need digital clothes, you need digital shoes, yeah, digital glasses. Everything's going to be digital. That's why you see brands like Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. Everyone is entering the metaverse through the NFT. And I think that's going to be the big thing, according to me.
I mean, I would just add to that, and not to sound pessimistic, but I think there's always a danger in crypto that it's the over-financialization of everything, that everything becomes a financial asset, everything has to be tradable, everything has a value, and personally, and kind of from our company's perspective, we kind of think that's a road to nowhere, because you're creating all this fictional value in a lot of basically junk in my mind. So I think there's a line of, okay, the technology has benefits, but like, let's not try and create financial products out of everything, because you're not really creating value. And I think in the long term, that value question doesn't go away, and it's going to rear its head, and things will come crashing down. So I just caution that over-financialization is not a good thing.
Nice. I like how we're stuck on the user interaction, especially like retail user interaction, is what's going to drive this forward, if I hear what you're all saying here, right? So be it social media, be it gaming in the metaverse, be it your virtual avatar. And I think the boom that we saw 2 years ago was very much COVID related. People spending more time on their screens, more time on their phones, fashioning their virtual avatar, their virtual self. It's also the same period we saw people selling tweets, right, as NFTs. I guess my question really is, what is the hurdle, or what is the way, the incentive for users to spend more time, now that we can go outside and see each other again? What's the incentive for people to spend more time fashioning their digital presence, be it in the form of social media tweets, or, interactions, or avatars?
Yeah, I actually spend a lot of time answering questions from traditional investors, like why bother about the metaverse when I could experience things in real life? And the more real it gets, the closer it is to my real life. So what's the real value we're going to derive out from it? So again, in the fund management space, I would say traditional money, it's not clever. Well, it's just a currency, right? So we manage these funds, we need to set up structure to make the money work for us. We need to work smart to make the not so smart money smart. But if you think about what Web3 offers us, DeFi or CeFi, in the blockchain space, we're talking about smart money. So if you're doing fundraising through ICO versus STO, there's a big difference. So let me give you an example. So we've been doing fundraising for the aviation business. So there's an airline that came to us, and they're just trying to raise traditional money so that they can operate. But they've been looking at NFT as membership, as a way to buy tickets. So I think that there's been a lot of talk about the loyalty space in terms of NFTs, digital assets. But interestingly, there was a cruise ship operator that came to us. And it bears the brand very similar to, I would say, the Oriental form of Disney characters that everyone's familiar with. I just wouldn't mention that character. But I would say it's a very popular character, and running that theme on a cruise ship will be very interesting. So they were raising $30. And out of the $30, we could probably fill that up with traditional fundraising, distributing through the private bankers. But the owner actually insisted that, okay, we should have some allocation raising funds from the Web3 space. And he's a guy in his pushing 60s, right? And he's been in industry for 30 years. So it's not easy to find someone in that kind of characteristic to say, I want to push for fundraising through a DeFi or through Web3. Now, when I dive deeper, I realized that he's in the retail business. So he's actually selling tickets, cruise experiences. And what amazes me is that he's thinking that he needs to have smart money because it's utility. Now, if you raise funds through that method, the kind of rewards that you can offer, building a metaverse on top of every cruise experience, allowing your friends to join you virtually on a cruise. So I can see that as providing some actual value that can be repeated. And you can do airdrops, that kind of loyalty programs traditionally would go through different distribution channels, right? So I think that's a way to create more user stickiness using this example.
As much as I agree with you, I don't feel like you need blockchain for that, man.
No, we need that because I think it depends on the use cases, right? We are just focused, like in this conversation, we have been focusing on just avatars and like cool, flexy stuff, right? If we go dive into like the real use cases or real applications that are being built, it's based on the problems that we have been facing for like a couple of years now. Talk about healthcare. Why should I be able to, like, I don't want my doctors to have like full access to my medical history. Like, why should I be giving to that? Instead of that, what could happen is like we can utilize technologies like zero-knowledge proofs where we can hide the data, right? But we can prove that, okay, this thing that I am telling you, it's just right? Just believe me because it's tech, it's math. right? It's just data points. So all of these use cases is what is driving this entire industry forward. So it's not just about avatars. I think it gives a lot of people, a lot of mass, a soft ground to talk about and enter into this space. Like a lot of people have been joining Web3 space just by buying their first NFTs, selling their first NFTs, investing in cryptocurrencies. But then the real thing that we have to be talking about is the use cases that are solving actual problems that no one's talking about because it's not cool and we cannot flex like, oh, I went to a doctor and I didn't like get all of my records because it's not something that we talk about. Right? So the use cases are there, and that's why we need, and I think that this industry or this technology is going to be like the mainstream adoption because the need is here. It's just we have to realize that it's solving key problems that might or may not affect us in like a direct manner.
Do you think the industry is too focused on retail applications? Because this is an infrastructural
Yeah,
overhaul.
because we have to make money. Like everyone wants to make money, and that's why we are facing to the retail first. Because I know, like if I'm creating a company, if I have an agency, right, I would definitely go after the companies or Web3 emerging markets, and I'll be like, partner with us because through that partnership, it will bring me a lot of money, right? But then what do you do of all the funds that you have acquired after? That's on you, and that's the kind of thing that the leadership team have to decide on.
Gentlemen?
I agree with that. I think lots of the Web3 application nowadays focus on some, I would say, relatively easy things, right? I mean, those trading stuff, but harder problems, but that are actually relevant to everybody's life, or like how we're going to do with your data, right? So-called, your data, your life, and this personal data bank idea. But there are lots of, challenges here. If you really want to make it work, you're not dealing with, just avatar or, your, any digital skin. You're dealing with people's healthcare data, for example. So then you have to put, privacy computations, zero knowledge proof, all sorts of stuff, and that takes a long time. So it's not as sexy as saying, oh, I just have some easy and fancy things going on. But I know that from my perspective, there's a large group of developers and a serious researchers are constantly investing time and effort into this space, and that actually is the core of this whole thing. So I think we need the business side, we need all the hype. At the same time, we are also sure that there are also solid things being developed all the time. Yeah.
Follow-ups? No? I guess we're stuck on we're kind of facing down the same barrel of data access, I guess. It's one of the easiest ways to overhaul infrastructure is limit access to data and really own the data that you provide depending on which vendor you go to or which service you choose to go to. And that's where blockchain really shines, right? It's intra-platform interoperability, I guess, right? You use the same exact blockchain or wallet per se to log into your doctor, give them access to different medical records, and then they log different medical records on the exact same infrastructure. Similar to the tickets, you can trade with people that are going on different cruises from different cruise ships. The same with loyalty programs, CruisePay, the Singapore Airlines payment wallet that we built, by the way, shout out.
Yeah, but I think interoperability is not something that's being offered by blockchain by default. That's something that we have to work on as teams, as projects, as like protocols, because each blockchain works in silo. So if there's Ethereum, if there's Solana, if there's Polkadot, if there's like all the other blockchain networks, there are like 100 plus blockchain networks. And I think at this point we should realize that users want to interact with more than one blockchain, right? So if they're interacting with more than one blockchain, that means that as a company, we have to come up with solution which will offer them that multi-chain transactions, that multi-chain interactions, right? So I feel like interoperability is something which is still a problem, and a lot of companies are trying to solve it through technologies. We were just talking about how the introduction of WASM, which is basically WebAssembly, will solve a problem of developers, having to learn a lot of languages, because with WASM, you can write smart contracts in literally any language, right? So like these are the innovations that will move this entire, like as we keep on simplifying steps, as we keep on simplifying processes and pipelines for developers to get onboarded, that's how the users will get on board, because developers will build solutions for the users, and user will realize the solution is legit and it's of their use, and they'll get onboarded to the Web3 space.
Very fair. I think it's the big difference that we talked about earlier, right, is going to be the difference between access and ownership, right? If you want to interact with a traditional company that's building access, so to speak, to the blockchain because you want to port skins from one to another, that's one development build, versus if you just want to build something purely on blockchain, it doesn't really matter because there is no central entity in the first place. So how do we go fully on-chain when it comes to ownership from now? I think this is one of the last questions. You can all give me a decent answer. How do we move from our current ecosystem where we're struggling with access and proving ownership through access to something that's fully on-chain?
So, okay, it's funny because, when we talk about blockchain, we say it's permissionless, data is available, anyone can use it, anyone can have those data integrated in their dApps, build dApps, ship them. But it's not as easy as it sounds, because blockchain is really, really complicated. Not a lot of people understand what's going on behind the scenes, what a block consists of, what kind of things that a block makes, right? And that's where I think we as a team have to come up with more tools such as APIs and SDKs, right? So irrespective of a developer working in Web3 or Web2, everyone is aware about how to integrate an API. So if I'm providing an API to a Web2 developer and I'm saying, see, this API, when you use that, it will fetch all of the information of all of the NFTs that a particular wallet address hold, right? It's just one-line integration and that's it. That particular developer doesn't have to know about anything about NFTs, what is metadata, what is blockchain, what kind of network it is using, what kind of protocol it's built on, no infrastructure, no node maintenance, nothing, right? They just have to write one line of code and that's it. They have all the data in their dApp. So I think simplifying process, I think that's the thing that I feel like we should all work together, because again, like we are at this point, we're just trying to onboard a lot of people into the Web3 space, and this is how you do it. If you're a product manager, make sure your teams, your dev teams, your engineering teams make or ship a lot of APIs and SDKs, because it will help your company as a company. It will get you more users, and it will help developers with their development journeys, which is not that easy.
Do we have time for one more answer? No? I think that's about it. That was already 40 minutes. Thank you all for coming on the panel. Thank you all for listening. This was incredibly entertaining. And a round of applause for the speakers.
Round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen, to our special panel discussion through digital ownership with DeFi and NFTs. Okay, next, let's welcome our next speaker, Tan Bin Ru, Deputy CEO cum Chief Operating Officer at ChainUp, with the title Singapore, the Global Blockchain Hub. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, hello. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, very good. Good afternoon to everyone. So, the topic is a little more generic today. I represent not only ChainUp, but also am the chairman of Singapore Blockchain Association. So I will talk a little bit about Singapore as a whole, and then a little bit about the Blockchain Association before we touch on ChainUp. Nothing new. I presume all of you are here because of your passion towards blockchain, and probably also a lot of people who are waiting for summer to come. I presume also a lot of people on crypto, right? So the global blockchain technology market is 10 billion, right? And it's growing at a CAGR of 87.7. growing to 1.4 trillion. I know it's winter, right? And therefore, a lot of people are questioning, is this still the case? But, honestly speaking, it is different. Blockchain and crypto are different things, although I think crypto or exchanges are the use case that you really see of blockchain. I'll touch a little bit of that. For those people who know me, I am from the Web 2 space, and only in the last 45 days I've moved to the Web 3 space. And seeing Web 3 inside Web 3 is really very different from seeing it from outside. I think you have to really experience it in order to understand. Stop letting others tell you that blockchain is too complicated to be understood. If you don't understand it, then don't invest or don't buy, would be my advice, right? So the Singapore blockchain market, if you look at it, is 272 million, growing at a lower CAGR probably because we started and wanted to be a blockchain global hub. I think we're positioned very well to get there. The slower CAGR is probably because we started first, and it will reach roughly about 2.6 billion. Also about 3%, close to 3% market share, which is very good for a small country like ours. So a lot of people asked, when is summer coming? How do we know that that's not the end of it? Actually, if you just look at blockchain alone, the Singapore Blockchain Association has been growing very well. And if we look at it, this is a technology wave trend that's very, very similar to internet. And if you look at 1996, the number of internet users, the number of Web3 users that is growing, shows the exact trend when internet first started. And in fact, the Web3 users are growing, even though it's winter currently, it's a little bit higher than the internet users. I think that, some people also said that it is the fifth winter. No, I'm not in crypto long enough. Never bought a coin in my entire life, right? To know whether, but if you look at it, it's the fifth winter, it is here to stay. So I think for good technology, revolutionary technology, it has made impact long enough to go through 5 cycles and yet still coming back. This is a global trend. I was talking to one of the veterans in the finance world, and it's of course in the Web 2 space, right? And he shared with me, I'm not old enough during that era to have a deeper understanding, but he shared with me that when the internet first started, the use case was pornography. Yeah, and it was heavily used for pornography initially before internet took a big impact after the internet bubble. So if you look at it, it is the same thing for Web3. We are seeing much more developers. So if you don't look at coin prices and all that, you just look at Web3 developers, the trend is looking positively here to stay. Singapore, this will be known to all. Singapore regulatory has been very pro blockchain, pro crypto to a certain extent, pro experimentation, I would say. Some people have indicated that MAS have changed their mind, they are bringing, but I think allowing experimentation is not endorsing it per se, right? You allow experimentation, you learn and you adjust, and that's what MAS is doing. So our regulators' strategy of running alongside innovators is great. If you are not aware, we have a group chat that has MAS in there. In the fintech world, as well as in the Web3 world, that you can pose questions to the regulators. In this blockchain world or in the Web3 world, whereby it's retroactive kind of governance, because you're running ahead of the governance, I think MAS strategy of running alongside innovators is great to understand what's happening on the ground and to make adjustments. And that you probably don't see the last point, and that's about the ecosystem that is already building up in Singapore. I will share with you about the Blockchain Association's development over the last few years, and you can see. So this is a slide that goes back to the Blockchain Association.